At my own birthday dinner, my fiancée told her friends, "He's too quiet. I should have stayed with my ex." So I leaned in and said, "Good thing I saved the messages you sent him." I knew something was wrong before anyone said anything about my ex-fiancée's friend or the messages. It started with my birthday dinner, which was supposed to be one of those simple nights where nobody had to think too hard. My fiancée, Claire, had planned it at a restaurant about 20 minutes from our apartment. She told me she had invited a few friends and that we were keeping it small. I had been working late most of that week, so I was honestly looking forward to sitting down, eating something expensive that I did not have to cook, and pretending my phone did not exist for a few hours. Claire had been my fiancée for 11 months. We had been together for almost 4 years. At that point, I thought I knew her pretty well. I also thought I knew myself well enough to recognize that I was not the loudest person in a room. I am quiet, not painfully shy, not socially incapable, just quiet. I listen more than I talk. I usually wait until someone finishes speaking before I jump in. I have never been the guy who needs everyone at the table to know what I am thinking. Claire used to tell people that was one of the things she liked about me. She said I made her feel calm. That was part of why what happened that night hit me so hard. The dinner was already underway when I noticed Claire checking her phone for the 4th or 5th time. She kept turning the screen toward herself and typing with both thumbs underneath the table. I assumed she was dealing with something from work. She had recently started taking on more responsibility at her job, and I knew she had been stressed. I asked if everything was okay, and she put her phone face down and told me it was nothing. I believed her. That was probably the first mistake I made that night. There were 6 of us at the table. Claire and me, her best friend Megan and Megan's boyfriend, another friend named Rachel, and a guy named Tyler who I had met twice before. I remember feeling slightly out of place because most of them had known each other longer than I had known Claire. That was not unusual. Claire had a big social circle. I had a smaller one. We had always managed that difference pretty well. The waiter brought out our drinks, everyone started talking, and for a while I relaxed. Someone asked about my new position at work. I explained that I had been moved onto a larger project. Megan asked if I was enjoying it. I said I was. Rachel asked if I had any plans for my birthday weekend. I said Claire and I were probably going to stay home Sunday and order takeout. Everyone laughed because Claire had apparently told them she had planned a surprise for Sunday. I looked at her, she smiled. I remember thinking that maybe the weird feeling I had been carrying all evening was just me being tired. Then the conversation shifted to relationships. It happened naturally. Megan was talking about an argument she had with her boyfriend over a vacation. Rachel was telling us about someone she had gone on 2 dates with. Tyler mentioned that he had recently reconnected with an old friend. Then somebody asked Claire how the wedding planning was going. Claire had been talking about getting married for months. We had already looked at venues. We had a shared spreadsheet. We had discussed a guest list. We had even started putting money aside specifically for the wedding, so I expected her to say something about flowers or invitations. Instead, she laughed and said she was not sure she was ready. I thought she was joking. Everyone else seemed to think so too. Then she said she sometimes wondered what her life would have looked like if she had stayed with her ex. The table got quieter, not completely silent, just quieter in the way a group gets when someone says something that was not supposed to be said. I looked at Claire. She was smiling. I asked if she was serious. She looked at me for a second and then said she was just being honest. That was when I felt something in my stomach drop. Her ex was a guy named Daniel. They had dated for about 2 years before Claire met me. I had never hated Daniel. I had never even met him properly. From what I knew, they broke up because they wanted different things. Claire told me he had moved away for work. She told me they had stayed in contact for a while and eventually stopped talking. That had always been the story. I had never asked for details because I did not think I needed them. I was not interested in competing with someone who was no longer in her life. At least, that was what I believed. Megan tried to redirect the conversation. She started talking about Claire's upcoming birthday. Then Tyler made a joke. Everyone laughed. I smiled because I did not know what else to do. Claire reached across the table and touched my wrist. She told me I was being too serious. I told her I was fine. I was not fine. I was trying to understand why my fiancée had just brought up her ex at my birthday dinner. Then, about 15 minutes later, Megan asked Claire why she seemed distracted. Claire had another drink in front of her by then. She looked around the table. She looked at me. Then she said she sometimes felt like she had settled. I remember that sentence because I can still hear how casually she said it. There was no anger, no dramatic pause, no crying. She said it almost like she was commenting on the weather. She told her friends that I was too quiet. She said she should have stayed with Daniel. Then she laughed awkwardly and told everyone she probably should not be saying this at my birthday dinner. That was the moment I stopped feeling embarrassed and started feeling strangely calm. I had spent the previous few months wondering if I was imagining things. I had noticed Claire becoming protective of her phone. I had noticed that she sometimes took calls outside. I had noticed that she had started mentioning Daniel more often. I had asked her about it once. She told me I was being insecure. I apologized. I thought I was making a problem where there was not one. But sitting there with 6 people around a table while my fiancée explained that she regretted choosing me, something clicked. I leaned toward her. I kept my voice low. I reminded her that it was a good thing I had saved the messages she had sent Daniel. The smile disappeared from her face. I did not raise my voice. I did not accuse her of cheating. I did not pull out my phone and start reading private conversations to the entire table. I simply told her that I had saved the messages because I had become uncomfortable with what I was seeing. She stared at me. Megan looked confused. Rachel stopped eating. Tyler looked down at his plate. Claire asked me what I meant. I told her I thought she knew exactly what I meant. That was the first time that night I saw genuine fear on her face, and that was when I realized this was not about her being drunk. It was not about her having a bad night. It was not even really about me being quiet. There was something else going on. I just did not know how much yet. A few months earlier, I would have probably handled that moment completely differently. I would have gotten angry. I would have demanded an explanation. I would have tried to prove that I was a better boyfriend than Daniel. I might have even apologized for not being more outgoing. Instead, I sat back and watched Claire try to figure out what I knew. That distinction mattered, because she did not immediately deny talking to him. She did not say I was lying. She asked how much I had saved. That question told me more than any confession could have. I told her I was not discussing it there. I said I wanted to leave. She tried to stop me. I stood up. I paid my share of the bill. Claire offered to pay for everything, but I declined. I remember Megan looking genuinely uncomfortable. She apologized to me. I told her she did not owe me an apology. She had not been the person I was engaged to. I left the restaurant alone. Claire followed me into the parking lot. She was crying by then. She told me I had embarrassed her. I remember thinking that was an incredibly strange thing to say. She had told a table full of people that she regretted being with me on my birthday, yet somehow I was the one who had embarrassed her. I told her I was going home. She asked if she could come with me. I said no. I drove home by myself. The entire way back, I kept replaying the last few months. I had started noticing changes around Christmas. Claire began locking her phone whenever I walked into the room. That alone did not mean anything. People deserve privacy. I believed that. She also started deleting notifications from her lock screen. Again, that did not necessarily mean anything. Then she began taking longer showers with her phone sitting on the bathroom counter. That was when I first started feeling uneasy. I never went through her phone. I want to make that clear because I know how these stories usually sound. I did not install anything. I did not guess her password. I did not break into an account. I had access to some messages because Claire had occasionally sent me screenshots when we were planning things. And one time she forwarded an entire conversation to me because she wanted me to look at something Daniel had apparently said. That conversation had stayed in my email. Later, when Claire and I were arguing about a completely different issue, she sent me another screenshot. I saved it, not because I was planning some grand exposure. I saved it because something about the conversation felt wrong. Eventually, there were enough pieces that I started keeping copies. I had no master plan. I was scared. I was trying to make sure I was not imagining things. When I got home that night, Claire called me 3 times. I did not answer. Then she sent a long series of messages. At first, she apologized. Then she said she had been drinking. Then she said she did not mean what she said. Then she said she had only said it because everyone was talking about relationships. Then she said Daniel had nothing to do with us. Then she said I was making everything worse by refusing to talk. The messages kept changing tone. Eventually, she told me she was coming home. I told her I needed space. She said the apartment was hers too. She was right. We were both on the lease, so I told her she could come home. I went into the spare bedroom. I locked the door. I barely slept. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of cabinets opening in the kitchen. For a few minutes, I lay there staring at the ceiling. I had work in 3 hours. I had a meeting at 9. I had bills due that week. I had a car payment. We had wedding deposits. There was no dramatic music playing in the background. There was just a dishwasher running and my alarm going off. That normality made everything feel worse. I got dressed and went to work. Claire sent me another message while I was driving. She said we needed to talk. I told her I agreed. I said we should wait until after work. When I got to the office, I realized I could barely concentrate. I kept thinking about her question from the night before. How much did you save? Not whether the messages existed, not whether she had contacted Daniel. How much did you save? That question stayed with me. At lunch, I opened the folder where I had stored the screenshots and emails. There were more than I remembered. Some were harmless, some were personal. Some were things Claire had sent Daniel about work. Others were about mutual friends. Then I found one that made me sit back in my chair. It was from about 6 weeks earlier. Claire had written to Daniel that she missed how understood she felt around him. She said she did not know if marrying me was the right decision. Daniel had responded cautiously. He reminded her that she was engaged. He told her she needed to figure out what she wanted before dragging me through something she was uncertain about. That message confused me. I expected him to be encouraging her. Instead, he sounded like the responsible person in the conversation. Then Claire sent another message. She told him she was not asking him to wait for her. She just wanted to know if he still thought about her. Daniel said yes. That was the first message that made me physically sick. I closed the folder. I went back to work. That evening, Claire and I sat at the kitchen table. She apologized again. She said she had been overwhelmed. She said planning the wedding had made everything feel real. She said she loved me. She said mentioning Daniel was unfair. She said she had not cheated on me. I asked her what she considered cheating. She said she had not slept with him. I asked whether she had seen him. She hesitated. Then she admitted they had met for coffee twice. She said it was not romantic. I asked why she had not told me. She said she knew I would overreact. That hurt more than the meetings themselves. I told her I would have been upset because she was my fiancée and she had secretly met an ex. She said that was exactly what she meant. We went in circles for nearly an hour. Eventually, I asked whether she wanted to marry me. She cried. She said she did not know. I asked whether Daniel wanted her back. She said she did not know. I asked whether she had asked him. She said no. That answer turned out not to be true. I did not know that yet. I told her we needed to postpone the wedding. She immediately agreed. That surprised me. I expected a fight. Instead, she looked relieved. That was another warning sign I ignored for a few days. We had already paid deposits. The venue had a non-refundable amount. The photographer had a smaller deposit. We had bought invitations that had not been mailed yet. Postponing meant losing money, but I did not care. I needed time. For the next week, we lived in the same apartment like roommates. We divided groceries. We went to work. We barely spoke. I moved some clothes into the spare bedroom. Claire started sleeping on the couch. I called the venue and told them we needed to postpone. They were surprisingly understanding. We lost some money, not enough to ruin us, but enough to make the decision feel real. The wedding was not happening. A week after the birthday dinner, Claire asked if she could talk. She told me she had made a mistake. She said she wanted to repair things. She said Daniel had made it clear that he did not want to get involved. That was the first time I wondered whether she had actually contacted him after the dinner. I asked. She said no. I believed her. Again, a few days later, I went to the bank to deal with something unrelated. We had a joint checking account for household expenses. I was reviewing the statements because our rent had gone up and I wanted to make sure our budget still worked. I noticed a charge from a hotel. It was not huge, about $200. The date was a Saturday. Claire had told me she had spent that Saturday visiting her mother. I stared at the statement for a long time. I checked the date again. Then I checked our shared calendar. She had marked that day as family time. I did not confront her immediately. Instead, I downloaded the statement. I saved a copy. I checked the credit card statements. There was another charge from the same hotel 2 months earlier. That was when I realized I had been looking at the problem too narrowly. I had been asking whether Claire was sleeping with Daniel. The bigger question was what else she had been hiding. I started going through our financial records, not obsessively, just carefully. I found a few unusual charges. Restaurants I had never heard of. Rideshare trips late at night. A second hotel charge. None of it proved anything by itself. But together it made the timeline harder to explain. I called a lawyer, not because I planned to sue Claire. I wanted advice. We had shared finances. We had wedding deposits. We had a lease. I wanted to know what I should do before making a mistake. The lawyer told me to separate our finances carefully. I was advised not to drain the joint account. I was advised to keep records of what belonged to each of us. I was advised to communicate in writing when possible. Most importantly, I was told not to make accusations I could not prove. That advice helped me. I closed my laptop that night and felt slightly less helpless. I opened a new account. I moved only my paycheck deposits there. I left enough money in the joint account to cover our shared bills. I documented everything. I started saving copies of rent payments, utilities, insurance, and wedding expenses. I did not tell Claire about the lawyer yet. I knew she would interpret that as an attack. A few days later, she told me she wanted to move out temporarily. I agreed. She found a short-term rental. We divided furniture. I kept the couch because she hated it. She took the television. We made a spreadsheet. It was almost painfully boring. That spreadsheet became important later. At the time, it just felt like paperwork. Once she moved out, the apartment became strangely peaceful. I stopped checking my phone every few minutes. I started sleeping better. I went grocery shopping without wondering if she would be home. I worked late without worrying that someone was waiting for me to explain myself. Then Claire started contacting me more frequently. She wanted to know whether I had told anyone. I said I had told my brother that the wedding was postponed. She asked whether I had told him about Daniel. I said no. She seemed relieved. That bothered me. She was not asking whether I had told him that we were having relationship problems. She specifically wanted to know whether I had mentioned Daniel. I started realizing that the thing she feared most was not losing me. It was being exposed. That thought made me feel guilty, because I still loved her. That is the part people do not understand about betrayal. You do not suddenly stop caring because someone hurt you. At least I did not. I could be furious with Claire in the morning and miss her by lunch. I could know that she had lied and still remember how she used to fall asleep with her hand resting on my shoulder. I could understand that the relationship was probably over and still want her to call me. That made the whole situation much harder. About a month after the birthday dinner, I received an email from Daniel. I had never given him my email address. I almost deleted it. Then I saw the subject line. It said he needed to clear something up. I opened it. He apologized for contacting me. He said Claire had told him that I was aware they had been talking. He said he did not know what she had told me. He said he had not known she was still trying to reconcile with me when they started talking again. Then he explained that he had recently asked Claire to stop contacting him. That surprised me. I wrote back asking what he meant. He sent me a timeline. He said Claire had contacted him months earlier. At first, he thought she was simply checking in. Then she started talking about our relationship. She told him she was unhappy. She told him I was emotionally distant. She told him our wedding was basically a mistake. Daniel said he initially believed her. Then she began asking whether he would take her back. He said he refused to answer because she was engaged. That was when she started sending more messages. He included screenshots. I did not ask for them. He volunteered them. There were messages I had never seen. Claire had told Daniel that I was controlling. She told him I did not let her see friends. She told him I monitored her spending. She told him I was jealous of him. None of that was true. We had disagreements. I had never controlled who she saw. I had never monitored her spending. In fact, I had been the one encouraging her to keep her own accounts. She had also told Daniel that I had refused to marry her. That was completely false. We had been actively planning a wedding. I sat at my kitchen table reading those messages. I kept thinking about all the times Claire had complained that I did not communicate enough. I wondered whether she had been building a version of me for Daniel that made it easier for her to justify leaving. The hardest part was reading Daniel's responses. He was not trying to steal her. He was repeatedly asking her to make a clean decision. At one point, he told her that if she wanted to leave me, she needed to do it because she no longer wanted the relationship. He said she should not leave me because she expected Daniel to guarantee a future with her. That was probably the first time I felt sorry for him. I had spent months imagining him as the other man. He was not. He was another person being pulled into a situation he did not fully understand. I asked him why he had contacted me. He said Claire had recently told him that I was going to expose their messages to everyone. He said he did not want to be dragged into a public fight. He wanted the truth documented. I thanked him. Then I stopped responding. I did not want a friendship with him. I did not want revenge. I just wanted the truth. 2 weeks later, Claire asked to meet. We met at a coffee shop during the afternoon. I chose a public place because I did not want another emotional argument in either of our apartments. She looked exhausted. She told me she wanted another chance. I told her I needed honesty first. She said she had been honest. I asked her about Daniel. She said she had not spoken to him recently. That was technically true. She had stopped contacting him after he blocked her. But she still did not tell me everything. I asked about the hotel. She looked confused. I told her I had seen the charges. She said one of them was for a work event. I asked about the other. She said she could not remember. I asked if Daniel had been there. She said no. That was also technically true. Daniel had not been at the hotel. She had met someone else there. I did not know that yet. She started crying. She told me I was treating her like a criminal. I told her I was trying to understand what happened. She said she had made mistakes because she was unhappy. I asked whether she believed I had made her unhappy. She said partly. I asked what I had done. She struggled to answer. She mentioned that I worked too much. She mentioned that I was not spontaneous. She said I did not express emotions enough. I listened. Some of those criticisms were fair. I did work too much. I was not spontaneous. I sometimes assumed that because I was loyal and reliable, Claire automatically knew how much I cared. I had not always said it. I admitted that. She cried harder. For a moment, I wondered whether we could actually repair things. Then she told me she still wanted to marry me. I asked why. She said because she loved me. I asked whether she loved me or whether she was afraid of starting over. She could not answer. That ended the meeting. I went home and felt terrible, not because I thought I had made the wrong decision. Because I realized that even if Claire never cheated physically, the relationship had already been damaged in ways that could not be ignored. She had taken private frustrations and built a separate emotional relationship around them. She had lied about me to another person. She had hidden meetings. She had lied about money, and she had publicly humiliated me at my own birthday dinner. I could forgive mistakes. I could not build a marriage on uncertainty. I told her we were ending the engagement. She asked me to reconsider. I said I had. That was the end of our relationship, or at least I thought it was. The next problem came from money. We had a joint savings account for the wedding. There was a little over $12,000 in it. We had each contributed different amounts. I had records showing exactly what I had deposited. Claire had records too. We agreed to split the remaining money after subtracting the legitimate shared expenses. The problem was that several wedding vendors had deposits. Some were refundable, some were not. We handled it slowly. The lawyer advised me not to make informal agreements that could later be disputed, so we documented everything. It took almost 2 months. The money was not life-changing, but it was enough that both of us cared. During that period, Claire's mother contacted me. She said Claire was devastated. She said I had abandoned her. She said I had humiliated Claire by leaving. I told her I was sorry that Claire was hurting. I also told her I would not discuss private details with her. She said Claire had told her I had been emotionally absent for years. I did not argue. I simply said that whatever problems existed between Claire and me, the engagement was over. Then she asked whether I had been seeing someone else. I said no. She sounded surprised. That conversation bothered me for days. I kept wondering what version of our relationship Claire had been telling her family. Then I learned something else. A mutual friend contacted me. She told me Claire had been telling people that I had discovered her messages by spying on her phone. That was not true. She also told people I had threatened to expose Claire publicly. That was not true either. I had told Claire I had saved the messages. I had never threatened to send them to anyone. I did not want to humiliate her. I wanted out. That was when I made another decision. I stopped defending myself to everyone. I realized I could spend the next year explaining every detail to every person Claire talked to. Or I could let the people who mattered ask me directly. I chose the second option. My brother asked me what happened. I told him. My closest friend asked. I told him I did not send screenshots. I did not make a public post. I did not tell coworkers. I did not contact Claire's friends. I simply told the truth when someone directly asked. That approach turned out to matter because Claire's story kept changing. At first, she said she had never contacted Daniel. Then she admitted she had. Then she said it was only friendly. Then she said she had been considering leaving me. Then she said she had never planned to leave. Then she said I had pushed her away. None of those things could exist comfortably together. Eventually, even some of her friends stopped defending her. Megan contacted me several months later. She apologized for the birthday dinner. She told me she had initially thought Claire was just drunk. Then she learned about the messages. Megan said she had also been told that I was controlling. She said she had believed it. I told her I understood. I was not interested in making her feel guilty. She asked whether I had actually saved the messages. I said yes. She asked whether I had ever sent them to anyone. I said no. She seemed relieved. Then she told me something I did not know. Claire had been planning to use the birthday dinner as a way to make me look like the bad guy. I asked what she meant. Megan explained that Claire had told her friends she was going to confront me about being emotionally distant. She said Claire wanted them there so they could hear her side. That explained why Claire had been so comfortable talking about me. She believed she had an audience on her side. What Claire did not know was that Megan had not been given the whole story. Neither had Rachel. They had heard only Claire's version. That was why the room had gone silent when Claire mentioned Daniel. They had not expected it. They did not know. The dinner had not gone according to plan. That realization stayed with me. I had been thinking about that night as a spontaneous humiliation. It had actually been a planned confrontation that backfired. I did not feel victorious. I felt sad. The woman I had planned to marry had arranged a dinner where she expected her friends to witness me being blamed for the collapse of our relationship. I wondered how long she had been preparing that version of events. Eventually, I found out. It was not through some secret investigation. It came from a box of wedding supplies. Claire had left several things behind after moving out. A binder containing vendor information, some old receipts, a notebook. I was going through the box because I needed to find a receipt for a deposit. Inside the notebook was a list of things Claire had written down before the birthday dinner. She had written several complaints about me. Some were fair, some were exaggerated. Then she had written notes about what she wanted to say at dinner. She wanted to explain that she felt lonely. She wanted to tell her friends that I was emotionally unavailable. She wanted to say she had doubts about marrying me. She had written Daniel's name in the margin. I closed the notebook. I did not read the rest. I had enough. I put it back in the box. For a few minutes I felt angry that I had not known. Then I realized something. Maybe knowing everything would not have helped. I had spent months believing that if I could understand every detail, I could somehow prevent the relationship from ending. I finally understood that some relationships end because one person has already started living outside the relationship emotionally. No amount of perfect communication can fix that by itself. That realization was painful, but it was also freeing. About 6 months after the birthday dinner, the financial side was finally settled. The wedding was canceled completely. The vendors were paid what they were owed. The joint account was closed. The lease ended. I moved into a smaller apartment. I bought a new couch. I replaced the cheap dishes we had accumulated together with a mismatched set from a discount store. I started cooking again. I joined a gym. I went back to seeing friends regularly. Nothing about it was dramatic. That was probably the best part. My life slowly became mine again. I stopped checking whether Claire had viewed my messages. I stopped wondering whether she and Daniel had gotten back together. I eventually heard that they had not. Daniel had apparently moved on. Claire dated someone else for a while. That relationship ended too. I did not ask why. I did not want updates. I was finally learning that not every unanswered question deserved an answer. The biggest surprise came almost a year after the birthday dinner. I received a message from Claire. She wanted to apologize. I almost ignored it. Then I decided to read it. She admitted that she had treated me badly. She said she had convinced herself that I was the reason she was unhappy because it was easier than admitting she did not know what she wanted. She said she had been afraid of turning 30 and starting over. She said she thought Daniel represented the life she had missed. Then she said something that stayed with me. She said she had spent so much time trying to prove that leaving me was justified that she stopped noticing how unfairly she was treating me. I appreciated the honesty. I did not ask her to come back. I did not tell her I forgave everything. I simply told her I hoped she was doing better. That was enough. For a long time, I thought the important part of the story was the sentence I said at the restaurant. The line about saving the messages. People who know the story sometimes focus on that moment. They think that was when I won. It was not. The real turning point happened earlier. It happened when I stopped trying to force Claire to admit what I already suspected. It happened when I started keeping records instead of arguing. It happened when I asked questions and paid attention to the answers. It happened when I stopped reacting to every accusation. The saved messages mattered because they protected me from being rewritten into the villain, but they did not save my relationship. They saved my understanding of what had happened. There is a difference. I also think I made mistakes. I ignored warning signs. I accepted explanations because I wanted them to be true. I thought being patient meant never pushing too hard. I thought giving someone privacy meant ignoring behavior that made me uncomfortable. I also failed to communicate some of my own needs. Claire was not completely wrong about that. I had become comfortable. I assumed that because I was working hard and planning a future with her, she automatically understood how committed I was. I should have said more. I should have noticed that we were becoming disconnected before she started looking outside the relationship for validation. But none of that justified lying. Both things can be true. I could have been a better partner. Claire could still have treated me dishonestly. I think that is one of the hardest lessons I took from the whole thing. Relationships rarely end because one person is perfect and the other person is evil. Sometimes two imperfect people stop being good for each other. The problem is that when betrayal gets involved, it becomes very tempting to rewrite the entire relationship. I did that for a while. I wondered if every happy memory had been fake. It had not. The vacations were real. The lazy Sunday mornings were real. The times she took care of me when I was sick were real. The conversations about buying a house were real. The love I felt was real. The fact that she eventually hurt me was also real. One does not erase the other. I think I finally moved on when I stopped trying to decide which version of Claire was the real one. She was both. She was someone I loved. She was also someone who lied to me. I did not need to turn her into a monster to justify leaving. I just needed to accept that I could not trust her anymore. A few months after her apology, I started dating again. The first few dates were uncomfortable. I kept expecting people to ask whether I was quiet because I was hiding something. That was not rational. It was just the residue of what had happened. Eventually, I met someone who liked quiet people. She did not treat silence as a problem that needed fixing. She would ask what I was thinking and actually wait for the answer. That was new for me. I did not tell her the entire story immediately. I did not want our relationship to begin with my previous relationship. When I eventually told her, she listened. She did not make jokes about Claire. She did not tell me I had been stupid. She just said that it sounded painful. That simple response meant more to me than she probably realized. We have been together for a while now. I am not rushing anything. I do not have a wedding spreadsheet. I am not looking at venues. I am not trying to prove that I can have a better relationship than the one I lost. I am just living. Sometimes I still think about that birthday dinner. I think about the restaurant, the table, the drinks, the awkward silence, the way Claire looked at me when I mentioned the messages. For months, I thought my quietness had somehow made me weak. Now I see it differently. Being quiet gave me time to notice things. It gave me time to think before reacting. It kept me from sending angry messages that could have been used against me. It kept me from publicly humiliating Claire. It let me leave with my dignity intact. I did not expose her. I did not ruin her life. I did not get some movie-style revenge. I just documented what happened, protected myself financially, told the truth when necessary, and walked away. That turned out to be enough. The last time I saw Claire in person was at a mutual friend's wedding. We were both invited. I almost did not go. Then I decided I was tired of avoiding places because she might be there. We saw each other during the reception. She smiled. I smiled back. We did not speak. There was no dramatic confrontation. There did not need to be one. Later that night, I was standing outside for some air when I realized I had not thought about Daniel once. I had not wondered what Claire was doing. I had not wondered whether she regretted leaving. I had not wondered whether she still thought I was too quiet. I was just standing there, listening to people inside laugh and talk. And for the first time, I understood that I had stopped waiting for someone else to tell me whether I was enough. I knew who I was. I knew what I had done wrong. I knew what I had done right. And I knew that the person I married would have to be someone who could tell me she was unhappy before inviting an audience to watch her tear me apart. That birthday dinner was supposed to be the night Claire proved to her friends that I was the problem. Instead, it became the night I finally stopped trying to prove anything to her. The messages did not destroy our relationship. They only showed me that it had already been falling apart long before I knew it. And honestly, I am glad I saved them, not because I wanted to embarrass her, not because I wanted revenge. I saved them because there was a point where I started doubting my own memory. Those records reminded me that I had not imagined what was happening. They reminded me that I was allowed to trust my instincts without turning into a suspicious person. Most importantly, they reminded me that when someone tells a different version of events later, I do not have to panic. I can stay calm, I can keep the paperwork, I can tell the truth, and then I can let the facts speak for themselves. That is what happened to me. I lost the wedding, I lost the relationship, I lost a lot of money on deposits and shared expenses. I lost some friends who had apparently only known the version of me that Claire told them about. But I also got my peace back. I got my apartment. I got my finances separated. I got my weekends back. I got to stop wondering why my fiancé was happier talking to somebody else. And eventually, I got to understand that being quiet was never the thing that made me easy to leave. The wrong person simply mistook quietness for weakness. I do not make that mistake about myself anymore.